Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making a modern cutout tee. Short sleeves, a flattering, flirty cutout, and all the texture you could want. Speaking of, fan of crunchy textured makes, or do you prefer keeping it sleek? Either way, you're in the right place. We have hundreds of easy to follow crochet tutorials and patterns in all flavors, with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 270 grams of yarn. That's 445 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you are a night owl or a morning person. I am a morning person. I love waking up when no one else is awake. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 5 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and Trinity stitch. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where like the bottom of this top to be, so cropped or full length. I'd like for mine to be full length, so I'm going to start by making a chain 61. That's 14 inches or 35 centimeters for me. And I actually already have my underarm portion completed, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to do our Trinity stitch. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off for the second chain from our hook, we're going to do our first Trinity stitch, which is going to be done a little bit differently than all the other ones. So we're all going to start with 1 single crochet into that chain that we blocked off. So insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. That is our first single crochet. Then from here, to complete this Trinity stitch, we're going to insert our hook into that same chain that our single crochet is in. So insert, pull through to get a total of 2 loops on our hook. Now we want a total of 4, so we're going to insert our hook into that following chain as well, pull through for 3, then into that following chain once more, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. Then from here we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4, and to complete our Trinity stitch we're all going to chain 1. Now that is how we're always going to do our first Trinity stitch unless stated otherwise, so now let's do the second one. The second one and the rest of the Trinity stitches, except for the last one, are going to be done the same way that we're about to do it. So getting that started, start by inserting your hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch is worked into. So this is mine right here. Into that occupied stitch, I'm going to insert, pull through for 2 loops on our hook. Again, we still want 4 loops on our hook. So into that following chain, insert, pull through for 3. Into that following chain, insert, pull through for 4. Then from here, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. Then to complete the Trinity stitch, we're going to chain 1. Let's do this once more. We're going to repeat the second Trinity stitch that we just did. So inserting our hook into that same stitch that our previous Trinity stitch is worked into that last stitch, we're going to insert and pull through. Into that next chain, pull through for 3, next chain, pull through for 4. From here, yarn over, pull through all 4, then chain 1 to complete this Trinity stitch. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat this Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down our chain, leaving the last 2, and then I'll meet you back. We've just made our way down with our row 1, leaving the last 2 chains. Now we're going to do our last Trinity stitch, and since we're at the end of an odd number row, we are going to be closing it off with an increase. So getting that started, it's going to start the same way as our previous Trinity stitches. Start by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch is worked into, pull through. Into that following chain, which should be our second to last, insert, pull through for 3 loops on our hook, and we still want 4, so into that following chain, which should be our last, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. From here, we're still going to yarn over, pull through all 4, and for the last Trinity stitch, instead of doing a chain, we're going to single crochet into that last stitch, so that stitch will be occupied. So insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Now that would be how we normally finish off our Trinity stitches, but since we do need to do an increase, into that same last stitch we're going to do a half double crochet and double crochet. So into that same stitch, yarn over with 1 half double crochet, then into that same stitch again with a double crochet. So pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and our row 1 is now complete. Now we should have 2 more stitches than chains that we made. Now for this portion of the pattern, every even number row will not have any increases or decreases, so all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and do our Trinity stitches all the way down. So let's just get the first 2 started together. Now how we're going to do our first Trinity stitch is always going to be started with 1 single crochet into that first stitch. Then we're going to insert our hook into that same stitch that our single crochet is in, pull through. Into that next stitch, pull through, and into that next stitch, pull through, because remember we want to have a total of 4 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through 4, chain 1 to complete. Now we're going to get started on our second Trinity stitch. Start by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through. Next stitch, pull through. Next stitch, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Then from here, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to complete. Continue on with this Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down until we have 2 stitches left. We've made our way down with our row 2, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to close off the row with a Trinity stitch with no increases and no decreases, because at the end of every even number row, we need that to be blunt. So what we're going to do is start by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through. Into that next stitch, which is our second to last, pull through. Into that next stitch, which is our last, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. From here, yarn over, pull through all 4. Then to close off our even number row, simply put 1 single crochet into that same last stitch. We should have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. From here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows, so we're just going to talk you guys through it really quickly. To get started on our odd number row, chain 1, flip our work. Our first Trinity stitch is going to be a single crochet into the first stitch, then pull up 4 loops. So starting with the same stitch that our single crochet is in, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, chain 1. Then our second Trinity stitch is going to be insert your hook into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 4, chain 1, then continue on with that Trinity stitch till we have 2 stitches left. We're at the end of our row 3. We should have all left the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to increase together. So just like how we did at the end of our row 1, start by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, which should be the last, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. From here, yarn over, pull through all 4, then into that same last stitch, a single, half double, and double. We are not going to do a chain 1. So into that same last stitch, starting with a single crochet, same last stitch with a half double crochet, same last stitch with a double crochet. And that's it. Then from here, we're just going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we now have a portion that can reach from mid-underarm over to the front of our body, so roughly where a bra strap or a tank top strap would lay. Then I'll meet you guys back right after an odd number row or along the top, then we can work straight into the shoulder together. Now, like I said, I already have my underarm portion completed. So I have a total of 7 rows. This width is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Once we have that width, we're then going to make an even number chain that reaches the top of our shoulder. So making sure that we're placing our tail end still at 1 inch underneath our underarm because we don't want our armhole to get too big or too small, we're going to make that even number chain. Now for those of you that have my numbers, I needed roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters, so I made a chain 20. Then we're just going to do our Trinity stitches with no increases and no decreases for the shoulder portion. So using my sample size, I'm going to show you guys how to do that following row. So once we have our chain, we're going to do our Trinity stitch all the way down. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then starting with the chain that we blocked off with a second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert, starting with just 1 single crochet, and we're going to do our first Trinity stitch. So as a refresher, inserting your hook into that same chain that our single crochet is in, pull through, into that following chain, pull through, and into the chain right after that as well, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to secure, then do our following Trinity stitch all the way down, making sure that we close off the row with just 1 single crochet into that last stitch to keep the bottom blunt. Then like I said, we're going to continue to do our Trinity stitch with no increases and no decreases until we now have a portion that can reach from mid-underarm all the way over to we're roughly 2 inches away from the side of the base of our neck. Then I'll meet you guys back along the bottom, then we can get started on the neckline together from there. So I'm back with my shoulder portion. Now I have a total of 14 rows. My width is roughly 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here is the cutout portion. Now we're going to start by inserting our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch from the top where we'd like for the edge of our cutout to be. Now keeping in mind that it is going to get a little bit deeper as well the more rows that we do. So I would suggest roughly at about mid-chest. So I inserted my stitch marker into the 34th stitch from the top. That's roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters. Since we should all be along the bottom, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Do our same Trinity stitch all the way up, leaving 4 stitches right before our stitch marker, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We've made our way all the way up with our Trinity stitches, and we should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're going to do our Trinity stitch decrease. We're going to start off our Trinity stitch the same way that all of the other stitches have so far. So inserting your hook into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitches worked into, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Once we have these 4 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4. We should all have just 2 stitches left right before our stitch marker. So we're just going to do a decrease of 2 into the last 2 stitches. So we're going to yarn over. We're not going to do that chain 1. We're going to yarn over into that next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4. And that is how we're going to do our decrease. Now our even number rows still aren't going to have any increases or decreases, so simply chain 1, flip our work, and do our Trinity stitch all the way down. And just to do our decrease together once more, at the end of that row, chain 1, flip our work, Trinity stitch all the way up, leaving the last 4 stitches, and I'll meet you back to do that decrease together once more. So we are back. We have completed our first decrease row. Our following row was a non-decrease row, and we're about to finish up our third row together. Now we should have all left the last 4 stitches, and we're going to do another decrease together. So once more, we're going to insert our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitches worked into, pull through, into that following stitch, pull through, following stitch, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4. Then we're just going to do a decrease of 2 half doubles into the last 2 stitches. So yarn over, into that second to last stitch, pull through, into that last stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. And from here, we're just going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we now have a portion that can reach over to mid-chest. Then I'll meet you back right after an odd number row or along the top. Then we can do our middle row and then mirror everything on the other side. So we are back. I've made my way down with my decrease rows. Now we're going to do our middle row. Our middle row is just going to be another Trinity stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So basically the following row that we would normally be doing. So chain 1, flip your work, and get that row completed. Then I'll meet you back to get started on the other side. We are back. We have just completed our middle row, and now we're going to get started on the increase side. So first things first, we are going to want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that middle row just so we know where that's at. Then, since we're along the bottom, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and do our Trinity stitch all the way up, leaving the last 2 stitches, and I'll meet you back to do the increase. So we've made our way all the way down, leaving the last 2 stitches, and now we're going to do our increase. The increase is going to be the same increase that we did for the underarm portion, so just as a refresher, so insert your hook into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitches worked into, pull through, into that next stitch, pull through and into that next, which is our last, and pull through. Now that we have these 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 4 and into that same last stitch with a single, half double, and double. So we have just completed our increase. Our following row isn't going to have any increases or decreases. So from here, just continue to repeat these 2 previous rows for the same amount of rows that we have for the decrease side, making sure that we are not including that middle row. When we have that completed, we should all end right after an odd number row. So from there, I'll meet you back so we can work straight up to the shoulder. We are back and I've just completed the increase side of my neckline. Now I have a total width of roughly 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters, and we all should have ended along the top. From here, we're all going to make the chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our neckline. So for those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 34 stitches. So on this side, I made a chain 34. Then from here, we're going to do the same exact shoulder portion that we did on this side. So Trinity stitch rows with no increases, no decreases. Then once we have the same amount of rows on this side, I'll meet you guys back so we can finish up with our underarm. So we are back. My shoulder portion is complete. My width is now roughly 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters. Now we're going to finish up with our underarm. So first things first, we're all going to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led up to our shoulder. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 20. So on this side, from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 20th stitch. Now from here, since we're along the bottom, we're going to do our Trinity stitch all the way up, leaving 4 stitches right before our stitch marker. So we're back. We've made our way up with our first underarm row, leaving the last 4 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're going to do our decrease, and since we already know how to do that, let's do this one together pretty quickly. Start by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through, into that next stitch, pull through, next stitch, and pull through for 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, then into the following 2 stitches, a decrease of 2 half doubles. Yarn over, into that second to last, pull through, into that last, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. Then our following row won't have any increases or decreases, so chain 1, flip our work, and just make your way down with our Trinity stitches. From here, continue to repeat those 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows as our first underarm portion, then do a chain of 1 and cut, and I'll meet you back. So we are back. I've just completed the entirety of my front panel. My total width is roughly 12 inches or 30 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do our cutout detail, which is this portion right over here. So what we're all going to want to do is start by inserting our stitch marker into an even numbered stitch from the top that's roughly 1 inch beneath the base of our neck. Now, I inserted my stitch marker into the 14th stitch from the top that's just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. Then from that stitch, we're going to insert another stitch marker. So from that stitch, we're going to insert a stitch marker into an even number of stitches for the length of the cutout detail. So we're going to do a little bit of math. We're all going to start by counting out the amount of rows that we have for our front panel cutout increase. So for this portion we have here. Now we should have the same amount of rows on both sides, so really just pick one. For those of you that have my numbers, I have a total of 9 rows, making sure we are not including that middle row. Then from here, from our first stitch marker, so the one that's right at the base of our neck, counting down towards the bottom, we're going to insert our next stitch marker into double the amount of stitches as rows that we have for this portion. So like I said, I had a total of 9 rows. 9 times 2 is 18. So from here, I counted down towards the bottom and inserted my stitch marker into the 18th stitch. Now, just as a really quick tip, if you have less the amount of stitches that we previously mentioned, so double the amount of rows that we have, that is completely fine as well. We just want to make sure that this detail that we have comes to a point before it reaches the middle of our front panel. So once we have our second stitch marker into place, we're going to insert our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to the first stitch marker that we inserted into, working down towards the bottom. So this is the base of my neck stitch marker. Into that next available stitch, I'm going to insert my hook and insert my yarn onto my hook. From here, we're now going to work our way down towards our second stitch marker with our Trinity stitches. So everything's going to be per usual. We're going to start by pulling our yarn through and do a chain up of 1. That chain up of 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to secure. Then we're going to do our first Trinity stitch. So into that same stitch that our chain 1's in, insert, starting with a single crochet, then finish up this first Trinity stitch and do the rest of our Trinity stitches until we have 4 stitches left right before our stitch marker. Now we've made our way down towards our second stitch marker. Now we're going to do our Trinity stitch that ends with a decrease. So per usual, we're going to insert our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through into that next stitch, pull through, and into that next stitch, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4, leaving us with 2 stitches now right before our stitch marker, then a decrease of 2 half doubles. So yarn over, into that second to last stitch, pull through, into that next stitch, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4. Now from here we're going to get started on the following row, but it's going to start with a decrease as well, so chain 2 and flip. So starting our row with a decreased Trinity stitch, we're going to start with a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over, into that first stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. From here yarn over, pull through all 5. Then we're going to do our first Trinity stitch. Now for the first Trinity stitch, we're typically start by inserting our hook into that first single crochet that we made, but we're just going to treat this decrease like it's our single crochet. So into that last stitch that our decrease is worked into, we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 4, chain 1, then continue on with the rest of our Trinity stitches, making our way all the way up, and at the end of the row our Trinity stitch is going to be blunt, so just close it off with a single crochet at the end of the row. Our first 2 rows are complete. From here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until our work comes all the way down to a point. So just like how I already have this side completed, we're going to continue to work our way down until it comes to a point. So once when it comes down to a total of 3 stitches, that last row is just going to be a decrease of 3 half double crochets, then do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We've made our way all the way down with our detail, and I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. We're now going to repeat everything we did here on the other side, do a chain up 1 and cut there again, and then I will meet you guys back to get started on the back panel. So now that the entirety of our front panel is complete, we're now going to get started on the back panel, and that's going to be done pretty much the same way as the front panel, but without all of these increases and decreases in the middle. So just to talk you guys through it, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of chains that we made when we got started on our front panel's underarm. Then we're going to have the same amount of rows as our front panel's underarm portion, as you guys can see I have here. Then we're going to make the same chain that we did for the front panel that led up to the shoulder. Then we're going to do our Trinity stitch rows for the same amount of rows that we have from our front panel's first shoulder row, all the way across to our last shoulder row with no increases and no decreases, so just a solid panel. Then we should all end along the bottom. Then we're going to repeat the same underarm portion that we have for the front panel. Then once we have the entirety of the back panel completed, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. So once we have both our front and our back panel complete, we are then going to seam everything together. So making sure that we're placing our front panel on top of our back panel. We're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and back panel. We're going to pull all the way through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then a single crochet seam. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert into that first stitch, next stitch into the back panel, insert and single crochet, doing that again, next stitch into the front panel, insert, next stitch into the back panel, insert and single crochet everything together. We're going to continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut and repeat on the other side, and I'll meet you back to seam up the shoulders. So now that our sides are all seamed up, the next thing we're going to do is seam up the shoulders. So making sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up, meaning the seam for the shoulders that we did are still along the outside. We're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, pull our working yarn through, and just put 1 single crochet into every side row. Finding that first side row within the front panel, insert into that top loop. First side row within the back panel, insert and single crochet. Let's do that again. Next side row within the front panel, find that top loop, insert your hook. Next side row within the back panel, find that top loop and insert. We're going to continue doing this till we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut and repeat on the other side. Alright, so we're back. We have just finished up seaming up the shoulders. Now we're going to work on the collar. So first things first, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, we're going to insert our hook into any one of our side rows that we have along our collar. So I just inserted mine into the stitch that I have that's nearest to one of my shoulder seams. Now we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then once we reach our side rows, we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. So I will meet you guys back once when I reach my first side row. So I've just made my way down with 1 single crochet into every stitch. Now working into our side rows, we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and start with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2. So there's 1 into that same top loop with a second. Let's do that again. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2. So there's 1 and then there's 2. We're going to continue doing that until we make our way down to the point of our piece. So now that we've made our way down with our single crochets, we now need to connect this point to the other point that we have for our front panel. So now all I'm going to do, because I don't want my points to touch, I'm going to start by making a chain 1, 2, 3. Now it does need to be a minimum of 3 for everyone, depending on how big you want this gap to be. But if you would like for the gap to be a little bit bigger, go ahead and add more chains. That is completely up to you. Then we're going to continue to single crochet, working our way up, alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row still, 1 single crochet into every stitch. Into the back, continuing to single crochet into every side row, still alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets, and then slip stitch into that chain space. Now just as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once one is completed, try your piece on, making sure that everything still fits. If it's a little bit too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. So now that our single crochet row is completed, we're now going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the collar to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 6. So now that our chain's completed, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Into that chain that we blocked off with the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. We want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the falling row will be too tight to work into, but continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. When we don't have any more stitches left, I will meet you back. Our row 1 is complete. Now we need to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Now we need to work our way up to the falling row, so slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, and flip our work. Now we're going to be putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert into that back loop, yarn over, and gently pull through everything. From here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are back. We have just completed our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base together once more. It will be done the same way as our previous row, so finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, making our way all the way around with no increases and no decreases, and I'll meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left so we can seam it all together. So we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows, and now we're going to seam it all together. Now this seam is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so we're all going to make sure that our work is slipped right side out, right side up. Then insert our hook into the first stitch of the front and back panel. So now that our hook is in through both the front and back panel, we're going to pull through. Then we're going to do our outside loop slip stitch seam. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only into that front loop. Then into that next available stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then when we have these 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Let's do that once more. Next stitch into the front panel, insert only into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through everything, and just continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that we have just seamed up our collar, the next thing we're going to do is clean up our cutout. So that's going to be fairly simple. We're going to make sure the work is slipped right side out, right side up. Insert our hook into any one of the chains that we made in between our 2 points. Then all we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets, making our way all the way around, starting with 2 single crochets. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook and start with 1 single crochet into every chain, and I'll meet you back at our first side row. So we've made our way down to our first side row. This is mine right here. All I'm going to do is find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1 into that same top loop with a second. That's pretty much it. Let's do that again. Into my following side row, find that top loop and insert with just 1. Into my next side row, find that top loop, then insert with 2. So there is 1. There's 2, and into the next, insert with 1. Find that top loop. There you go. And we're just going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space, and I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed single crocheting along our cutout. Now we're going to work on our sleeve. So first things first, we're all going to insert our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole, then work our way around our armhole. We're all going to start with alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, starting with 2. So we're going to chain 1, work our way up our underarm portion, then once we reach our stitches, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back once we reach our shoulder seam. So we just made our way all the way up to our shoulder seam. Now the amount of stitches that we have in total must be in multiples of 3. So if you guys need to, go ahead and add an additional stitch or 2 into that stitch that's right before our shoulder seam. Then once we have that number, insert your stitch marker into that last stitch so we know where one of our middle stitches are. Then we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. 1 single crochet into every stitch. If you guys needed to add an additional stitch on this side, you're going to have to do it on the other side because we need to have the same amount of stitches on both sides. Then once we reach our underarm portion, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, starting with 2. Now just to get the following stitch started, into that next available stitch that we have on the other side of our shoulder seam, insert your hook in through there with 1 single crochet, and don't forget to insert your stitch marker into that stitch so we know where our 2 middle stitches are. Complete this row and I'll meet you back at the end. So we just made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. Now from here, we're going to make an odd number chain the length that we'd like for the sleeve to be. And since I'd like for mine to be a short sleeve, I just made a chain 5, which is just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters. Now we're going to do our Trinity stitches all the way down. So as a refresher, block off that chain, do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off for the second chain from our hook, insert starting with a single crochet, then complete this Trinity stitch. And we're just going to continue to do the same Trinity stitches that we've been doing this entire time until we have 2 chains left, and I'll meet you back to increase. I've made my way down, now I have 2 chains left. Now we're going to do our increase, and it will be done the same way as all of our increases. So as a refresher, into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitches worked into, pull through, into that next chain, which should be our second to last, pull through, and into that next one, which should be our last, we're going to insert, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4, then into that same last chain, a single, a half double, and a double. And now that we have that increase completed, we're going to connect it into the base. So how we're going to do that is start by counting up the next 2 available stitches. So there's 1, there's 2. Into that second stitch, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch up just that next available stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and do our Trinity stitch all the way down with no increases and no decreases. Now since we already know how to do that, I'll let you do that on your own and the following row as well. So at the end of our row 2, chain 1, flip our work. Do your Trinity stitch all the way down, and into the last 2 stitches we are going to do a Trinity stitch increase the same way that we just did this one. Then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are back, and now at the end of our row 3, now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we just did. So start by counting up the next 2 available stitches and insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch. Again, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and then do our Trinity stitch row with no increases and no decreases. From here, continue to repeat these 2 rows until we're worked into our first stitch marker stitch, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. We have made our way all the way up into our first stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to repeat everything we did here, working our way down the other side, but instead of increases, we're going to be doing decreases. So for the following row, if you guys ended along the outer edge like me, you're going to chain 1, flip our work, do our Trinity stitch all the way down, leaving 4 stitches. For those of you that have ended along the base, you guys are going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, same way that we've been doing. Work your way out, again with no increases and no decreases. Then you're going to also chain 1, flip our work, and then work your way down until we have 4 stitches left right before the base. Then I will meet everyone back to do our decrease together. So we are back. We have made our way all the way down, leaving 4 stitches right before our base. Now we're going to do the same decreases that we did for the body. So as a refresher, working into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 4. That should leave us with the last 2 stitches, and into the last 2 stitches, we're going to do a decrease of 2 half double crochets. Now that we have that, just connect it into the base the same way that we've been doing this entire time, and make your way down, repeating this row and our following row with no increases and no decreases till we don't have any more stitches left. Then I'll meet you back to seam it all up. So we are back. We have just completed the decrease side of our sleeve and we are now all done. Now the last thing we have to do is just seam it, but the seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our side seam, so I went ahead and already got that done. That's going to be a single crochet seam, so just making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, do our single crochet seam, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. Then once we have this completed, we are all done. Last thing we have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!